Cardinal Francis George wraps up 17 years as a spiritual shepherd of the Archdiocese of Chicago. We'll talk with the Cardinal about what guided him as an Archbishop. Father Augustus Tolton is yet one major step closer to sainthood. We'll take you to St. James Chapel for a seldom seen service. And hundreds of couples celebrate 50 years of marriage. We'll learn their recipes for a successful marriage. Welcome to the latest edition of The Church, the Cardinal, and You. Hello, I'm Todd Williamson, Director of the Office for Divine Worship for the Archdiocese of Chicago, and joining me as always is Cardinal Francis George. Cardinal, it's always good to see you.
Good to be with you, Todd. Thank you very much.
I'm glad you're here. Cardinal, 17 years as the Archbishop of Chicago.
17 and a half.
Coming to the to the end of that role, that ministerial role for you. As everyone knows, Pope Francis has appointed Bishop Blaise Cupich from Spokane, Washington, as the 9th Archbishop of Chicago. What can you tell us about Archbishop-designate Cupich?
Well, I think people will discover who he is relatively quickly, I think. And it's best to have him explain himself through his actions and his words. He's a man who is able to analyze things very quickly and makes good decisions and sticks by them. And so in that sense, he's an able pastor who's concerned about seeing that the Church remains true to her mission. And I think people will be very pleased to have him as their Archbishop.
Oh, good. What advice would you give him as he comes into his role as Archbishop of one of the largest archdioceses in the nation?
Well, he's been bishop in 2 other dioceses, so he certainly knows how to be a bishop. Just that it's magnified, and that makes a difference, a big difference, because it is so large. Listen, but he knows that, and then explain yourself. And, there are a lot of nooks and crannies in this archdiocese, and a lot of people who are hidden in different ways, and sometimes you can overlook them, but he's aware of that too. So you just have to be very observant, and I relied very much on my auxiliary bishops, who were good pastors, and they taught me a lot, and on the pastors of the parishes. And he's got councils, he's got all kinds of people who will tell him, pay attention to this, do that. And so if he listens carefully, I'm sure things will go well. And
certainly we need that for an archdiocese. I mean, we're so large. Number of parishes, all of it, I'm sure.
It is, but I mean, a parish is a parish is a parish. And so we have the great advantage, therefore, of having a lot of resources. That's something he mentioned to me. He's never been in a place where there's so many resources. And so that's, our size is a great, it's a challenge in some way, but it's a great advantage too.
Yeah, our benefit, right?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent.
A lot of talented people.
Well, Cardinal, as you've said oftentimes, one of the major responsibilities of pastoring is to tend to the sanctification of those whom you lead. And that's certainly the case in your role in the process of canonization for Father Augustus Tolton. There was a very important prayer service that was held at St. James Chapel recently to advance this cause. The service concluded the diocesan phase of the investigation into the life and the virtues of Father Augustus Tolton.
The society was embroiled within slavery. We fought a huge war that had huge casualties, trying to give a resolution to that whole issue. And the backdrop of that sets the stage for Tolton's life, as well as his suffering, given the racial demarcation that was ordered for our society back then. How he got through that and remained a pastor, a member of the Catholic Church, with his faith and his hope and his love intact, is what makes him extraordinary for the times in which he lived.
We stand in the shadow of his ministry. May his light inspire us.
It was the binding and the wax sealing of the entire dossier on Tolton's life. The end of a 4-year research phase of pulling together anything and everything that documents his life here, up to his death, from his birth to his death. And that is all sent off to Rome, and they pick it up from there, scrutinize it all, and hopefully the Holy Father will advance him to the next stage, which is the stage of venerable. And then we work on the miracles, possibly, to push this forward.
You can go to the Archdiocesan website at archchicago.org, where you will find a link with both print and video resources regarding Father Tolton. Cardinal, what's that process been like for you in terms of advancing the cause of Father Tolton?
Well, Bishop Joseph Perry has very ably, as it's called, vice postulator, guided the process. What we had to do at this level before we send everything off to Rome was the historical inquiry, which is very extensive. It's somewhat easier with Father Tolton because most of his writings were letters and conferences, and so you have to investigate everything he ever wrote and his reputation, etc. All that has been done now, and so it's put together, closed, as the ceremony indicated, and sealed and sent off to the Holy See, to the Congregation for Saints. They open it up, and the cardinals who belong to that dicastery that advises the Pope about canonizations, they study it and they say, yes, it looks as if this man was heroic in his practice of the Christian virtues. If that's the case, he's then known as venerable, and we wait for God to work a miracle through his intercession.
Yeah.
And there are some cases already advancing of reports of, we hope, miraculous cures. I was very glad that we could do this with Father Tolton. First of all, because historically he's so important. He's a slave who, was raised by friendly priests and sisters, Franciscans and school sisters of Notre Dame down in Quincy. And they encouraged him to go to the priesthood. Rome sent him back to this country precisely because, as Rome said, they have to see an African priest. And if you're so enlightened, then welcome him. Well, he wasn't exactly welcomed in Quincy. He was much better welcomed in Chicago at that time. And here's where he ministered and died. And I brought his name forward because, first of all, I believe he is a holy priest. But also because the names of priests who haven't been so holy have been all over the place in recent years. And it's good to remember that that's not the history of the priesthood, here or anywhere else. And so here we have Father Augustus Tolton, and I sincerely pray that God will bless us with the miracles we need in order to advance his cause.
Cardinal, 17 years of ministry here. As you approach retirement, what do you find yourself reflecting on?
Well, it'd be good to be able to sleep late once in a while. I'm sorry to be so trite, but there are days.
That's what retirement is all about, right?
Well, I'll find out. I've been at this kind of responsibility in the church since I was 35 years old. Right. And at first as a religious superior, provincial, and vicar general, and then as a bishop. And so we'll see how it works. And of course, I'm in the midst of treatments for my health. And so that will determine the schedule to a great extent, whether I can travel or not. But basically, I am eager to be sure that we put paid to a number of initiatives and then hand it over to Archbishop Supich and say, you've got a functioning archdiocese. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. And may God bless you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Cardinal. We ask our viewers to stick around for highlights from the Golden Wedding Anniversary Mass and more conversation with Cardinal Francis George when we return.
Cardinal George is first a wonderful and caring priest, available to everyone in the diocese, as is shown by the number of times he's gone out to visit the facilities and the churches in the diocese and dialogued with the people. Cardinal George, I thank you for everything that you have done for this diocese, and I wish you the very best in your retirement, which is well deserved.
He has very strong beliefs. He is not afraid to express those. Secondly, in expressing those, he does not shut down discussion with other religious communities, but opens up and contributes to that discussion with other religious communities, because you know that he listens. and you know that he has deep respect for other faith communities, and that his love of knowledge, he's a great scholar, contributes to the atmosphere of interreligious discussions.
To Teach Who Christ Is, a campaign for Catholic education and faith formation.
I believe that when we are teaching about Jesus Christ to our students, that gives the greatest role model that we could possibly have.
You will have the basic tools to make good moral decisions that will affect your future.
Academics are great here, and if you don't understand something, the teachers will work with you to help you understand.
Religious education classes help my children to see the difference between right and wrong and make the right decision.
To Teach Who Christ Is will be rolled out in parishes across the Archdiocese of Chicago over a 3-year period. To find out more about this major fundraising campaign for Catholic education and faith formation, go to toteachwhochristis.org.
When I grow up, I want to use my education to help other people and, teach others about God.
I think one of the things that I'll always remember about Cardinal George is how he would reach out to everyday, average people, no matter where he was. In fact, I remember one time going with him to the Union League Club for a big benefit dinner, a big fancy black tie benefit dinner. And we walked into the room, and before he greeted any of the dignitaries or any of the other guests there, he walked around and he greeted each one of the serving people and spoke to each of them in Spanish, and then went over and sat down at the table. And he seemed to know many of them because he'd been to this club before, but really very much interested. I remember he asked the head waiter, "How is your family? How are you doing?" And they were so pleased that he would have taken the time to greet him. But he was genuinely interested in who they were and how they were doing.
Those are some very nice comments about you, Cardinal George. The Archdiocese of Chicago, how do you pastor an archdiocese?
Well, that's a very good question, because usually we think of pastors as pastors of parishes, and they truly are. Parishes are Eucharistic communities. A diocese is a church in the fullest sense, and its pastor is the bishop. So you have to have the same concerns you would have at any level. First of all, are the people being introduced to Jesus Christ in an adequate way? Are they enjoying the celebration of the sacraments? Are they available for them? Are they learning who Christ is in catechesis and in our schools? Are they being trained not only to love each other in the Christian community, but to love those whom Christ loves and died for, which is everybody? So love your neighbor as yourself. Is that integral to the life of the Archdiocese? Those are constant concerns that you have to keep watching to see are being met. And as long as you do that, I'd say the approach is one of awareness, to watch the ordinary work go on, and all of a sudden something extraordinary happens. How do you respond? Or something should be happening, and how do you help others to respond? In that sense, it's kind of, in operational terms, strategy and tactics. Tactics are what you do every day. You got to do this stuff. It's there in the book. Strategy is when you step back and you look at, well, what are our final goals here? What's our mission is what we say. What's our purpose? And so we have the strategic pastoral plan that we've worked on. This year it's the sacraments. We have the campaign to be sure that education is well financed. We have a large number of these initiatives that come and go, if you like, even as the ordinary work and ministry of the church goes on. I've been particularly concerned there in terms of strategy to see to it that people are well formed. Because if people last forever, buildings don't, institutions come and go, countries come and go. But if you have people well formed and they're going to last forever, then your work is eternal. The consequences are eternal. And I think any priest and others involved in ministry have to keep that in mind. What I'm doing has eternal consequences. I say that to the seminarians all the time. You can do something else and make a lot of money, and that's fine as far as it goes. But if you want to do something that's going to last forever, become a priest.
With all the administration, sometimes I think it's important for us to remember that you, as Archbishop, you're our father. That is part of the ministry, part of the role.
Yeah. I have a role that is fatherly, as a spiritual father, and also brother and son in many ways. But Jesus is our father, and he is the head of his church, and that's the role that the bishop is supposed to play.
There's been so many experiences where we've seen you reaching out to people one-on-one. You reach out to the poor. You personally, you reach out to the suffering. Does that come from your role as a missionary?
I think the scope of it might, in the sense that as a missionary in an international congregation, you have a wide sense of the diversity of situations in which human beings live their faith. And so you watch for that here. But the actual concern about the poor, no, that's not. Every Catholic has that, and it's knit into our DNA as an archdiocese here in Chicago. I'm very proud of that. We've been very concerned about the reform of the society always. When I was a little boy, we had social justice as a concern. And so that has only increased. Catholic Charities has grown exponentially almost in recent years around things that have been strengthened because I've wanted to emphasize housing for the poor, etc. And the Women's and Children's Program in places where otherwise there would be food deserts. Our concern for the poor is right at the center of our life as an archdiocese. And that would be the case no matter who is archbishop. It should be. That's part of our Catholic faith anywhere in the world. But a pastor does reach out one-on-one, as well as, because I'm the archbishop, in a large way. But that's where we use auxiliaries in a particular way. The auxiliary bishops are supposed to know what's going on in the parishes and among the priests and keep me well informed. We meet every 10 days or so, and what's going on here, what's going on there. They're very well informed. And I'm grateful to them. I could not possibly have been archbishop here without their help, and the help of thousands, literally, of other people.
Cardinal, it's well known that you were just talking that idea of reaching out. It's well known that after major celebrations, major liturgies, you always remain. You always stay. You stay to the last person.
Well, that's when the coffee and cake is being served.
and that means so much to people.
Yeah, well, it gives you a chance to hear a lot of things you wouldn't hear otherwise. You sit down with people and a cup of coffee, they say things that you wouldn't hear otherwise.
Yeah, you recently had a wonderful chance for that at the celebration of the 50th wedding anniversary Mass at Holy Name Cathedral. More than 450 couples celebrated 50 years of marriage at the Golden Wedding Anniversary Mass. Cardinal George was the main celebrant and the homilist.
If we give our lives to Him, if we look at that crucifix and hold it and offer our life to Him, we will never be alone. Living together for married couples in the church therefore means a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, and Christ. Christ crucified and risen from the dead.
The Sunday afternoon Mass included a renewal of vows for those in attendance.
Renew to you the promise that I made to you 50 years ago. We have been growing older together. We have together seen good times and bad, sickness and health. We have seen our love deepen. I will stand by you now, and I will love you all the days of my life.
And how did these couples manage to stay together for half a century?
Wow.
I always let him have the last word. As yes, dear.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, dear. So I got the last words.
A lot of compromise.
Goes by fast, and it just family. That's all it takes.
And faith in God.
Yeah, I think that helped. 50 years
50
together.
years.
We made it. Three kids,
Three
and
kids,
seven grandsons.
No girls. No girls. 3 sons and 7 grandsons. No girls.
Just got to work hard at it every day.
You know what? We have great communication, so we always keep in tune with each other that way. Yeah.
And what do you think? How did you guys stay together and stay happy?
Be lucky enough to marry your best friend.
For one thing, you're pretty busy, and when the bumps come, you can't afford to actually do anything but ride over them. And after the kids are raised, it's downhill all the way.
Cardinal George, in that celebration, what strikes you the most about these people who've been married 50 years there before you?
The real heroes of the faith. We all know the family is in trouble these days. We just finished a preparatory synod in order to have a synod on the family next year, because the synod is the place to discuss important issues before the whole church, and the family is as important as any other issue we have right now. We all know that. It's the domestic church. It's where people learn to love for the first time. And if the family breaks down, you have a lot of unsocialized people, and you risk having people who don't have that relationship to a father or a mother in a way that can stabilize their spiritual life as well as their human life with others. So the family is of extreme importance, and here are people who, with a lot of challenges and all, have stayed the course. And God has given them enough health to celebrate 50 years together. They have their children, their grandchildren, sometimes great-grandchildren. They're remarkable people. And when you get a chance to listen to them a little bit, when the pictures are taken, and their families as well, who are very proud of them, and they should be, you get a sense of the way God's grace works in their life. You know, you talk about my work here. It's the work of God who uses us to do good things. And without His grace, we couldn't do that. There's His grace in action and the witness to it. It's a great joy to see.
In a culture where everything is so fleeting, 50 years, that says an awful lot about their vocation.
Well, sure it does. It's a vocation for life until death do us part. And that's been the case.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah, I am too.
More to come with Cardinal George and highlights from Noche de Gala. Back in just a moment.
The city of Chicago and surrounding areas owe Cardinal George an enormous debt of gratitude. He's directly responsible for the development of thousands of units for the elderly, for disabled, for low and moderate income families, in developing housing which is affordable and safe. The West Side you could look to, the often forgotten South Side, Pilsen, Little Village, back of the yards. You see his footprint with the development of capital to help groups develop housing, as well as the Archdiocese and Catholic Charities developing this housing.
The cemetery ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
One thing that's apparent about Cardinal George's attitude towards vocations and seminarians can be seen in his presence at the seminaries. Really more than any of his immediate predecessors, and probably all the way back to Cardinal Mundelein, he is physically present at the seminary for events throughout the years in an extraordinary way. He makes himself available to the seminarians, and he knows them personally.
Cardinal George has had a ministry in Chicago that has touched many lives for many years, including those of myself and the members of my orchestra. We're grateful for his passion, for his ministry, for his years of service, and for doing all that he could possibly do to reflect positively on the Archdiocese of Chicago and the people of faith of the entire country and the world.
Welcome back to the Church, the Cardinal, and You. Now let's turn to an annual celebration in honor of Hispanic ministry in the Archdiocese, Noche de Gala. Our Director of Hispanic Communications, Al Castile, has that story.
This was the 16th annual Noche de Gala, and the theme was Celebrating the Joy of the Gospel. Nearly 700 people showed up for the celebration, which was held at the White Eagle in Niles. One of the highlights of the evening was the presentation of awards to people and groups for their dedication to Hispanic ministry. Cardinal Francis George, Bishops Rojas, Mans, Vipik, and Kane, and Father Marco Mercado all took part in the awards presentation. Father Ezequiel Sanchez received the St. John XXIII Award in recognition of priestly dedication to Hispanic ministry. Father Sanchez was the founder of the annual Noche de Gala. He was director of the Office for Hispanic Catholics, and he is known for his multimedia approach to evangelization. The Chicago Congregation of the Missionaries of Charity was presented the St. Teresa of Avila Award in recognition of a woman religious or community in Hispanic ministry. This group's Chicago apostolate consists of a very busy soup kitchen, a home for pregnant women and elderly homeless women, and a streets ministry that involves bringing food to the homeless. Deacon Antonio Villalobos was the recipient of the St. Stephen Award that honors a deacon in Hispanic ministry. Deacon Villalobos was honored for a lifetime of helping communities with various needs through ministries that focus on family catechesis. Jesse Estrada was honored with the Gaudium et Spes Award in recognition of Hispanic lay ministry. Jesse helped residents of Summit, Illinois with health, social, and immigration issues. He spent many years in the Archdiocese of Chicago supporting the vicar, pastors, parishes, and Catholic schools on administrative, financial, and construction issues. Jorge Rivera received the St. John Paul II Award for his tireless efforts to bring the love of Christ to Latino young adults. Jorge is a gifted musician who has chaired 4 Chicago Archdiocesan Encuentros for Latino young adults, as well as the first multicultural encuentro of young adult ministry in Chicago. Parish certificates were also awarded to 47 people for their contributions to Hispanic ministry, giving Noche de Gala attendees plenty of reason to celebrate. I'm Al Castillo for the Church, the Cardinal and You.
It looks like it was a wonderful event, but it's a very important event for Hispanic ministry in this archdiocese.
And therefore very important for the archdiocese because the Hispanic community is growing proportionately. Each year becomes an ever greater proportion of Catholics who belong to that community. It isn't entirely Spanish-speaking, but those who come with that heritage and that culture certainly are an ever more important and influential group in the archdiocese. So something like this marks all of that, and it's a big event, and I always enjoy it very much.
In these last moments of the show, Cardinal, it's the last show for the Church, the Cardinal and You. It changes format and name after this. What closing reflections would you have for our viewers?
Closing reflections, well, somebody once asked me what do I want to have on my tombstone, and if I had one word, it would just simply be thanks. And so I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful for the chance to serve the Church and the world as Archbishop of Chicago. Grateful most of all to people in the Archdiocese of Chicago who have made this all possible and who have continued to pray for me, and I ask for their prayers as we move forward. And each morning I pray for everybody in the Archdiocese, and I'll continue to do that. After all, a relationship changes, but it's not broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll continue to keep everyone in prayer. And, from time to time, there are particular needs that come forward, and to respond as best I can is something I hope I'll continue to do.
You're our shepherd, our pastor, our father. You must know how well loved you are. I hope you know that, anyways, and keep
Thank
it.
you. I have a hard time hearing that sometimes, but I'm very grateful to hear it. Thank you very much. It's kind of you to say it.
Cardinal George, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you. I thank you for the conversations and thank you for being here.
Thank you for your ministry, Todd.
Not at all. You've been watching The Church, the Cardinal and You. I'm Todd Williamson. Goodbye.
When I think of His Eminence Francis Cardinal George, I have a very strong sense of gratitude for his presence with us, what he has given us, which is unbelievably rich. His testimony of faith, I think he's an inspiration, a good pastor, a good shepherd, a good father for all of us, and the ways he does his ministry with his passion for the poor, anything that has to do with justice, all these things that are unbelievably important for us as Catholics. We're just grateful and such an inspiration for me.